In this video, we're going to create a CN10 hair salon projections, financial projections for 6 months using what-if assumptions. And we'll begin with the revenues that are already listed for each of the months. We actually need to add the name of the months. So I'm going to start with January. And then I'm going to use the fill handle to do the order fill for the rest of the months. And I will do that not only for the revenues, but also for the expenses. And again, I'll just grab the fill handle and it'll copy up to June for the expenses in this line. I'm also going to do some formatting. So the first one is for the title and subtitle. I'm just going to apply some colors. Let's say this one, maybe a bit darker. And I will change the font color. Let's try and see how it's going to look in just white. Looks good. And I'm going to make it bold. Maybe increase the size of the font a bit so it looks a bit better. All right. And I'm trying to match it with the what-if assumption area, and it's slightly off. So if you kind of like a bit concerned about the color coordination, you can easily apply some changes. So for example, like this, it looks better a bit. Now I'm going to see if I need to modify anything in the items that I'm listing. So obviously revenue, gross margin, expenses, total expenses, and operating income. These are main categories. I'm going to just highlight them, make them bold so they are standing out. And these items I'm just going to increase in dent because there are subcategories within those. The first thing I'm going to do is to figure out the expenses for each of the categories using the revenue for each of the month. To do this, I'll begin with the very bottom, equipment repair and maintenance. So as with any calculations in Excel, the very first step is to enter the equals sign, and then I'm going to multiply the revenue for the month by the equipment repair and maintenance allocation in the what-if assumptions area. So I'm just going to click on the cell, times, and I'm going to click on this cell. And now watch closely, because if I leave it as it is, when I apply this formula to February, March, and so on, see what happens. The reason being, if I'm looking at this function, so I see that the cells that are involved are B4, that's January revenue, and B25, which are the equipment repair and maintenance percentage that is allotted for this month. But once I move to this formula, it using relative cell address, it copied and adjusted it for this column, column C. So now I have C4 times C25. And while C4 is just fine because that's where I show the revenue for the month of February, I have nothing in C25. All my information stayed in B25. So I need to adjust this by changing the relative type of cell address, which is B25, to the absolute cell address. To do this, you just need to make sure that you have dollar signs in front of the column and in front of the cell. And now let's try to apply this formula to the rest of the columns. And now it works just fine. So let's check for month of March. If I click on the formula, Now it definitely shows that the cells involved in this formula are located in D4 and in B25, exactly as we intended that. All right, so now let's repeat the same steps for marketing site rental and commission and figure out the amounts that are expected using the what if analysis, the amounts that are expected to be spent in each of these months. So again, equal sign revenues times the percentage that's allocated for this specific activity. Make sure to make it an absolute address, absolute cell address, copy it to the rest of the cells, do it for the site rental, multiply it by site rental percentage, make sure that it's again absolute cell value, cell address, and the last one is for the commission, again the revenue times, and let's find the commission. Commission is in cell B22, B22, and make sure that you reflect that this is absolute cell address, and make sure you copy it to the other months. And now we're done with the all these expense items. Now we need to figure out what the bonus is going to be, and if we look at the what if assumptions, we can see that the bonus is 5 grand, but there is also a condition. The sales revenue for the bonus need to be at least 65,000. So if we look at the month at January and February, we'll see that they're actually not quite there. This is 64 and 500, and this is 60,000 and 500. So these 2 months you probably wouldn't want to pay the bonus. So we can do it just like looking at the values and comparing it, but that's not productive. To make it productive, you are actually going to write an if formula in the cell for bonus, and you're just going to compare the revenue with the condition for paying the bonus, and if this value is greater than this value in cell B21, then you're going to say, okay, so we're going to pay 5 grand. In the case it's not true, we're going to pay nothing. So we're going to use the function if, and the first parameter that's going to go in this function is the logical test. So in our case, the logical test, you're just comparing the value, the revenue of the month, which is B4, with, so it needs to be greater or equal to the value which identifies when the bonus happens. So it's B21. Okay, and again, so the formula works for the rest of the columns. You need to make sure that you want to make it an absolute cell address, so it always points at B21 and doesn't travel to the other columns. All right, so again, one more time, the revenue for this month need to be greater or equal to the condition when you're going to pay this bonus, so the value that's in cell B21. Now, what happens if the value is true? So the first parameter, we're done with it, so I'm putting comma, moving to the second parameter, which is value if true. So if this is true, then we want to pay 5 grand, and 5 grand is located, this value is located in cell B20. Again, let's make sure that this is an absolute cell address. So you always point to this specific cell and not anywhere like C20 or D20. All right, so this is what happens if the value is true. Now let's put another comma and move to the last parameter, which is value if false. So obviously, if we don't reach 65 grand as a revenue for the month, we don't want to pay any bonuses, so it's just going to be 0. Now let's close the parentheses, press enter. Our formula is in here. We are not paying any bonuses in January because the revenue is less than 65,000. I'm going to copy this formula to the rest of the months, and we do show the bonuses for all the months but January and February, exactly like we predicted. Right, so we're basically done in here. I would like to also do some additional editing, so I'd like to probably make the months, like put them in bold, maybe change the, not the fill, but let's change the font. I'll make it, say something like this. All right, so we're done with this. Now we need to calculate the total expenses, and the total expenses are just going to be obviously the sum of all the expense items. So I'm just going to type in sum, open parentheses, and I'm just indicating the range where I need to add all the numbers. And then I'm going to grab the fill handle, drag it across, and get the numbers for the other months. Also, if you notice that in here we have dollar signs in front of the number, and we don't have those dollar signs up here and up here. So what you can do, for example, if you click over here and click on, use the right mouse click, go to Format Cells, go to Currency, and apply the currency symbol. Or you can do accounting, that'll also work. I'm going to use the currency. I'm going to show 2 decimal places, and I'm also using the symbol. You also can choose in between the formats how you want this be presented on your spreadsheet. In my case, I'm just going to use the first one, click OK. So now the formatting is applied. Now, if you want to copy the same formatting to some other cells, what you can do, you select the cell, the formatting on which you like, go to Format Painter, and just paint the cells. And this will apply the same formatting to the rest of the cells. Again, you like, let's say, this formatting, go to Format Painter over here under the Home tab in the Clipboard group, click on Format Painter, and just paint the range that you want to have similar formatting. All right, now the last thing we want to do is to calculate the cost of goods sold and the gross margin. So to do this, I'm just going to say, all right, so we have the total revenues for the month, and now I'm going to do the following. Actually, before I'll type in the formula, I just want to explain something so it's easier to understand what we're going to do in here. So let's say you're going to a department store, you're going to buy something on sale, and this item is $100, but they're also saying that the sale is 75%. So 75% times $100 is $75. That's how much you're going to save, right? So to determine the original price, to determine the actual sales price, you're going to take this $100, the original price, minus $75, that's how much you're going to save because 75% discount. And so 100 minus 75 is going to be $25. That's how much you're going to pay for this item which is on sale. Very similarly, we're going to calculate the cost of the goods sold. So I'm going to take the revenue for the month, which is 64,500, and I'm going to subtract the product of the revenue and the margin. Very similar how I calculated how much is 75% expressed in dollars, right? So I'm going to take and say, so it's going to be B4 times 78%, which is located in the cell B19, okay? So basically you can do some additional alternations, like instead of this, you can say, I can present it in a way where it's going to be B4 outside of parentheses and then 1 minus B4 times 19 is going to convert into, I'm taking B4 outside of the parentheses, so it's just going to be 1 minus B19, and of course I want to make the cell address B19 to be an absolute cell address, and I'm done with the calculations here. So the cost of the goods sold in January is basically $13,706.25. I'm going to apply this formula to the rest of the months, and to calculate the gross margin, all you have to do is to subtract B4 minus B5. Okay, and just apply this across the board, and we have our gross margin. The only additions I would like to make here is to just make this text bold. The same here for the total expenses, and of course to calculate the operating income. And the operating income is going to be very simple. It's just going to be the gross margin minus what we have for the total expenses for each month. So it's going to be B6 minus B14, and I'm going to apply it across the board and also make it bold. And here we have this Santen Hair Salon projection, financial projection for 6 months.